Hi, good evening, and a very warm welcome to my panelist. We may have Shubhi join us in another 5 minutes, so we'll keep it open for her to come in as well. So I'm just going to start with the Indian retail landscape is evolving at an unprecedented pace. Driven by digital acceleration, there's a lot of new consumer expectations and innovations in the retail media and e-commerce space. Today, we have all of you here to give us insights on how do you think this transformation is going to create seamless omni-channel experiences. Before I dive into the discussion, let me just set context on this panel. The fusion of retail media into commerce is changing the way brands are interacting with consumers. It's not just about capturing their attention, but how is that attention moving into actual action? Brands that have successfully been able to integrate data, technology, and experiences will lead the wave of this retail growth. Let's hear from our panelists today. How are they navigating this shift? Abhishek, let me start with you first. Financial services have undergone a digital transformation from online banking to fintech innovations. With the evolution of Retail Media 2.0, how do you see financial institutions leveraging data-driven strategies to engage consumers?
Thank you. First of all, I'll start with probably a statement which might be a little controversial, but I'm saying this thing of data and using technology, it's not new. It is not something that we have just discovered now. It has been existing in a different form. And so therefore to say that how it is changed or it's always evolving. Let me give you an example. I think this was almost 12, 13 years back when iPhone 5 was launched. Currently we're in iPhone, I think 16, right? But I'm talking about time when iPhone 5 was launched. It was the first phone which had a fingerprint sensor. At that time, that was a very big thing. I was working with the mobile store, which was India's largest retailer of mobile handsets and accessories at that point of time. And we were thinking what to do. One clear insight, which still holds true today, is number one, Apple users are fiercely loyal. And number two, Apple users like to upgrade their devices probably once after 3 generations of the devices. So what we did was at that point of time, remember this is a time when WhatsApp was just coming around. It was not as prevalent as it is today. So we sent an SMSs to all Apple customers who had bought Apple phones from us. So iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, who would have bought. And since we knew which model this customer had bought with us, we gave an exchange offer to the mobile, putting out the value of that customer's device, the exchange value, and asking them to come to our stores and buy a new iPhone 5. It was just SMS at that point of time. We did not anticipate the kind of response we got out of that. In fact, we had to request Apple for fresh stocks because we actually the demand was so huge. The point I'm trying to make is the marrying of data and technology has been around. Since the way you use data and the way you use technology has evolved, and so are the ways in which we are communicating with the customers. In today's world, and I'll talk specifically about life insurance industry, life insurance depends heavily on advisory. So in spite of people buying everything online themselves and the DIY world, 88% of all life insurance product bought across the industry is bought when there is an intermediary in between. This intermediary could either be a bank agent, could either be an insurance agent, could either be an agent of a broker, or it could also be a telecaller from an aggregator like Policy Bazaar. But there is someone in between, and that requires a huge amount of advisory. So the way we use technology, we divide it into 2 broad parts. How are we enabling the customers? But more important, how are we enabling this distributor? How are we giving all the tools that the distributor has so that they can make life easier for their customers and the purchase decision is very smooth? Let's give an example. it's the period of JFM which is going on for insurance business. This period we do 60% of our business in these 3 months, and with March probably contributing almost 30-40% of that business. So at this point of time, there are so many tools that are given to the distributors of their existing customers. If the customer has bought a ULIP, what is the current fund value of the customers? We give them personalized communication so that they can go to the customers and give that personalized communication. So if Anita has bought an ULIP with us, the advisor will go to Anita and give Anita a statement of Anita that this is what your fund value is and now it's time to invest in a new policy. Depending on the product that the customer has taken, there are new products that are suggested to the customers, and that is typically done at the back end through AI and through use of technology. So a lot of personalization that we do in a business which is highly advisory led is done by the use of technology, and obviously if we do not have data, we can't do that. So distinctively, I will do it in 2 parts. One is for consumers, and that's fairly easy to talk about, so I'm not going to delve too much into that. But often as an industry, we do not talk about how are we enabling the person in between who's selling, and that has been our focus.
Thanks, Abhishek. I love the example of an SMS being used as technology to, upgrade your iPhone. And I also like the point around the enablement of the, set of people that you need to enable to run your business. A very different angle to ensure how do you technologically enable them. Coming to you, Akhil, what have you done in your sector which look at these kind of media strategies getting developed using data?
So as the person who's going second, and given that we're both in the same industry, we use technology a lot of the same way. So I'll try to not sound like I'm on repeat, but a lot of what Abhishek says also resonates with what we're doing. I think the point that Abhishek made about, insurance, really, life insurance is an advisory business. As life insurance, across BFSI, honestly, as an industry, we're very data rich. Right? There is so much information about customers, spending patterns, life goals that BFSI companies have traditionally been able to mine. I think but despite all of that, really, at the end of the day, you have to understand why is the customer making a decision? That decision is based on trust, right? So for us, really, when we're looking at how data and technology helps us, it's really about how can it help me reinforce that trust. Right? I do have a person who is there at the other end, right? And that's one surrogate. But if I have to differentiate myself, really, how can the technology and data make that process easier, whether it is for the distributor, right, or for the customer? Now, today we're at this point where customers are wary of sharing their personal data with you. We see it in life insurance, right? Anybody who has visited a Policy Bazaar or any aggregator today, where we are putting something like our mobile phone number in, right? We just want to get a quote, but we don't want to get that call within the first 30 seconds or 60 seconds saying, I'm here to sell you something. So really, when you're leveraging it, especially within BFSI, it's important to ensure that the customer understands that you're using the data responsibly, right? And there has to be a really clear benefit for the customer, right? Or the distributor. That benefit could be in the form of, say, more seamless onboarding, right? Where we come from a business where paperwork becomes traditionally, very, very incumbent on the customer. You have to fill in so many forms, you have to submit so many documents, bank statements, KYC, so on and so forth, right? Can we use data and technology to kind of simplify that process? So like at Bandhan Life, one of the things we said is we don't want you to upload any documents. We don't even want you to take a photo of a document and scan it and send it to us. Just enter the document ID number. So for example, enter your PAN number or enter an Aadhaar number. Let me do everything else in the background. Let technology and data do all the heavy lifting there. You go through the process of understanding the product. Let me explain that better to you, whether it's through a calculator, right? Or whether it's just through some sort of, business illustration that allows the customer to kind of see himself in that position. Very often when a customer buys a financial services product, he is not fully aware, right, of which financial services product is right for him. That's why advisory is so important. And if technology or data can help kind of surface that and say, okay, fine, if you have a life goal or a financial goal, this is how this product is going to help you. Really, that's where we can, differentiate ourselves.
No, I'm glad you kind of somewhere covered that the regulatory framework that you need to follow to ensure that the consumers is comfortable giving you that data, and that is what you're taking care of from a business standpoint. I'm going to move to Shubhi right now. Shubhi, retail banking is obviously no longer just about online transactions, right? It's really about the seamless experiences, the unified pieces. I go into a branch, I go into my mobile app, I try and do some internet banking. So in this entire piece of moving into seamless experiences, how is Standard Chartered Bank working around this?
Thank you, Anita. I think a lot of my fellow panelists here talked about the fact that how it's important for the client to be at the center of every messaging that we do, and also ensure that every messaging that we are making, we are sending to him is also available with the front line. I think it's all about experience. I think with Standard Chartered, we've been here for almost 160 years. And one of the things that has been crucial for us is to ensure that the generations that bank with us and the generations that are now joining us have a very seamless and a very experiential interaction that happens with our relationship managers, because we are looking at high net worth individuals. So which means the touch points that we use, whether it's online and offline, have to be so seamlessly integrated, not just in terms of the messaging, but also in terms of how are they going to avail that particular, how are they going to be more inquisitive about that messaging and reach out to our clients. I'll give you an example. I think this is one of the strategies that we have evolved now over a period of time. For instance, integrating the physical and the online medium in terms of increasing brand awareness, and which is, of course, a very, very simple exercise and very often used, which is QR scans on newspapers, right? And I think we were pleasantly surprised because this has been used very often. It is a run-of-the-mill idea, but how did it help us in that sense? Most of our advertising is print-led advertising. We are reaching out to H&I clients. And of course, our messaging is very brand-focused. It's very attribute, very pillar-focused. It doesn't say, scan the code and get 2,000 rupees off. So for us, a metric measurement is all about saying whether he's going to consider me after this campaign, and did he actually effectively look at me as a choice for a wealth brand. So interestingly, when we actually put the QR scan on all the newspapers, we could see around 15 to 20% of the leads coming through QR scans, through print advertising. And this was something that we never effectively possibly looked at in the past, still being a very, very heavily led print advertiser. So I think three things very, very important, Anita. One, you need to know who's your target audience. Is it a sophisticated investor? Is it a native investor? Is it an amateur? Is it an affluent entrepreneur? Or is it a global Indian? Very simply put. So know your target audience very, very clearly. Second, of course, if you're unifying the two mediums, you need to ensure that your message, and I think it's gone off. It didn't like my messaging too much. So you need to be very, very careful that your messaging is consistent, so that he sees the messaging at both the places in a very similar way. And third, of course, the experience. If he's scanning the QR code, you're able to call back the client in a particular period of time. And of course, follow him through and ensure that whatever he is asked for has been fulfilled. So those are my 3 points.
Thanks, Shubhi. I like the part about saying the QR code finally gave you a lot more traction. I think it's really a function of, the ease with which today we use a Paytm or a Google Pay, etc. Where previously, I remember a couple of years back when QR code became a thing, we got very poor responses. But today that you see from an industry standpoint, the QR codes are now making back and giving you better results than you initially started it. So it's come of being, if I may say that, from a QR code point of view, which is great to see. Coming to you, Puneet, how would you want to add to the seamless experiences at your side?
Yeah, so, we have a very unique business of both physical and online, right? And we've been here for 25 years. And it's only recently that we have gone into a digital transformation. We've launched 2 apps last two years back. So connecting the data points of the conversation which happens at a retail branch onto the online journey experience is something that we've been able to stitch very seamlessly. I'll give you an example. If a relationship manager has somehow convinced a customer to open an account, now, unfortunately for us, opening an account is not and just entering a mobile number and getting an OTP. It's a seemingly relatively long process, which you have to enter your PAN card, your bank details, your picture, your Aadhaar card, and all of that. Now, typically, all these documents are not handy with customers at all points in time, right? Now, so what we've done is that when a customer just starts the journey, he or she realizes that, oh, I don't have these documents with me. Now, and for us to make it a seamless experience so that the RM is not calling up every now and then, what we have is that for every drop off at every stage, we have a communication that goes out to the customer, either through a telesales call, so that stitching the experience, like Shubhi was mentioning, it shouldn't happen. A telesales caller calls up and says, let's start from step number 1. The telesales caller clearly knows that this customer is dropped on step number 4, so the conversation starts at step number 4. Similarly, if the customer doesn't want to speak to you, and most of us don't want to speak to us on the call, right? When you're working, you simply get a video message which clearly describes starting from the drop off. So it's step number 4. So the video starts from step number 4 to step number 7. So it's clearly identifying what is that's required from the customer. Customer clearly knows the value of this message and hence acts on it. Our DIY account opening has now reached 85%. Purely because of stitching the data from physical to online and also to the sales staff. Adding to what Abhishek also had clearly mentioned, it's not only about the customers, right? It's also about the entire sales team. Like for example, the sales team clearly knows, okay, I had 1,500 leads, out of which so many got converted, so many are stuck at this particular level or this particular point in the journey. So many customers have traded, and now is the time for me to get a referral from the customer. So the entire data flow from online to onboarding journey to the sales team and hence the sales action, which is in simple terms, it's connecting the LSQs to the Salesforce, to the Clever Tabs, to the everything else is something that we have done. And I think the seamless flow of data is actually what works for efficiencies.
No, Puneet, really like that, because you said if you can pick it up from step number 4 to step number 7. Just a few days back, I was having a conversation with my friend saying, I looked at that red shoe, I bought that red shoe, and that red shoe is still haunting me. So obviously there is work needed to get done in some cases, but it's great to see that you've got that 4 to 7 step going for you. I'm going to move to Richa now. Richa, luxury retail, especially in categories like diamond, thrives on emotion, storytelling, exclusivity. How is this industry adapting to retail media 2.0? And what are the strategies that you have used for creating these digital experiences for the consumers? I know you come from a counsel side, but let's hear your side of the story on your part.
So thrilled to be here and feeling quite out of place amongst, the panel and how, I feel that our industry still has a lot to catch up on. But the one thing, and I'm picking on when you both mentioned, Akhil said that you have a lot of data that already existed or has been used since the past. For me, when you walk into a jewelry store, we have about, depending on which report you look at, around 600,000 doors in India. You walk into a store, you're invited in, says, "Arey bhabhi ji, kaisi hai beti ki shadi?" They know your daughter, they know your granddaughter, they know exactly what she's wearing, where she went, how she's traveling. And there's a level of personalization to the point where you turn and say, "Bhabhi ji ke liye chaat us dukaan se lana, meetha kam dal ke." So the level of personalization that exists is the reason that you're sitting in that store for 3 hours. And when the man says, "This is it for you," you choose him over any influencer, over any stylist in the world and say, "Hey, this man has my goodwill at heart and he's Now, our jobs as the industry is to say, how do I take this online? Of course, it's great to say I have this data point and how do I use it? You mentioned an SMS and said, for us, lockdown started, we had the largest companies in the country who said, I did 150 crore ka business on WhatsApp. And that was proof of pudding that people had faith in you. You took pictures of the collection and said, Bhabiji, you wanted something like this. Here are the 5 pieces. Of course, agencies took it a step further, helped us package it prettier. We sent it across. You had a customized selection, not a random catalog which goes to everybody, but which came to you. Then you said, shortlist from here. Then you sent a man over who took the 5 pieces. She did a trial and she bought it there. Now, the price points that we operate in are much higher, of course, so it exists. What changed during lockdown for us, it forced us all to say that we need to have a digital presence. It forced us all to say that we need to be a step ahead, because the amount of data that the consumer was taking in at one point, it didn't matter if it was a girl at Grammys, which happened last night, or there's somebody who's going for a puja, or somebody going for Neeta Bhabhi's Ganpati ki puja. You knew what everybody was wearing, and I wanted all to be covered. And keeping that in mind, discovery started in a very, very big way. You used to go into one jeweler, sit for 4 hours, 6 hours, come out. Now you said, let me explore online and say, get to 6 people, have choices ready, and come back. I'm going to give you a small example on where, how comfort level, he said, you don't want somebody starting from step 4, or he said, you don't want somebody calling you within 30 seconds and saying, kya hai? We all went into China. We were told this is the best retail. This is a lot of years ago, it's 7 or 8 years ago. You went into a store, they had a retina scan, and you walked in, they addressed you by name, and they said, hi, it's great, we believe you've bought this bracelet and all. Since you seem to like jewelry on your wrist, here is what we recommend. And you had to see all of our faces. We said, shit, what all do they know about me? Do they know my income tax details? Do they know what I'm buying? Do they know? The fear, there was a fear. Whereas when uncle sits there and says, aapki beti ne wo plane pakad ke wahan gaya, you are happy. You don't think it's the same. So it's a matter of how you've presented, or how intrusive you come across as. And for luxury, it's craftsmanship, it's quality, it's the personal experience. It's not just a deal. It's a moment that you're remembering for life, whether it's your first job as a woman, treating yourself, getting engaged, getting married, anniversary, forgetting milestones, but every piece of jewelry matters. I don't think we've reached a stage where we are making the most of what the BFSI industry is, or the financial world is making use of. I think we are stuck somewhere in between, but what we are doing very well is that we are playing, we've really upped our game on discovery, we've really upped our visibility, the targeting, custom messaging going to people at a specific moment in their life. Anybody who starts to, explore wedding websites, you're targeting wedding jewelry to them. It's become the messaging has become so much sharper that the certain brands are doing a great job of it. I think we are one of the industries who should really take pride in how we could have made WhatsApp what it is, and we've really taken it to a next level. But does a store in Bombay have, if I was to go into the same brand in Delhi, would I have the same experience? Probably not. We still have that little leap to take. We haven't reached where we go from 4 to 7, and that's something we need to do. But I think that at this point, for luxury, it'll never be one or the other. It'll always be an omni sort of presence. We need to touch and feel what we are buying, but we are going to be balancing act is what the brands need to be at.
No, thanks, Richa. I love the, example of the human touch and getting your favorite chart at your jewelry show wherever you're picking up the diamond. So that was a nice twist to the larger piece, saying that human, touch is all equally important as much as what we look at the tech side. Both play a very important role. Ripple, coming to you on this one, and you also in Sleep Company have certain brands which, kind of cater to the luxury segment. What are your thoughts on this?
So Anita, was this planned that after 24 minutes you're getting a guy who's talking about sleep, right? So everybody's half asleep. So my first job is to wake them up. So to simply put across, so we clearly see ourselves on two fronts. One is an omni-channel play, and two, like on my right or on my left, people who have been 160 years or 100 years in this country. We're just 5 years old, so 60 months old company. We have been born because of data. So we believe that there is no way to live the life without data, right? So our first genesis is data. Second, we believe in disrupting everything, right? Because as a startup, one thing which you do is always question status quo and always question how you're going to do things differently. So giving an example of our industry, before us, this industry was all governed by mom and pop stores. So every mattress shop you would have looked at was always governed by a dealer or a distributor, where if you were to go and buy a 40,000 or 50,000 rupees mattress, he will first switch on the lights, saying कि अभी तो madam ji आई है, right? So that's the experience of luxury when you're paying 50K. So we said that's not something we are going to do. We started our journey with all COCO stores. So today we have around 130-135 COCO stores. The objective is to give an amazing experience to the customer. Because if he's coming and taking out time, right? First of all, he's traveling for 20-30 minutes to our store, then he's spending an hour with his family. You need to give an amazing experience in the journey. Second, from a data perspective, like everybody talked about, we believe the entire journey of Omni-Channel is through lead management, right? From generating lead through multiple sources. Today, my store knows when somebody walks in that this guy came as a lead from XYZ activity, which would have mean that he would have spent ABC time on certain things. So I don't need to talk about my brand right now to him. What I need to talk about to him is about my product, about what can I offer him. But if he knows that this lead has come from very base to know my store, right? He will first introduce you the brand to the core, because he knows I have to now talk to you about the brand, I have to sell you myself. So that's how leads help you with accustoming what kind of journey would you give to the customer, and then help them in the process, right? And third and very simple piece, I think while we all don't like people calling us, but one of the first pieces which we've realized is that people give us lead, right? People give their own numbers, people give their own email IDs. And if we reach to them within the first 30 minutes, our conversion is upward of 75%. If I reach to them within 2 hours, it drops drastically. If I reach to them within 6 hours, the deal is done. Because as I'm giving you the number, my intent is very high, but it cannot be like some of the other where within 30 seconds you get a call. You want to give some time. So we've done multiple modelings of when to call you after you give the lead, right? And that is where we realize that this is the optimum time frame, which will lead to a better conversion, and he is hot enough to give us and hear us out.
No, thanks so much for that, Ripple, because it again talks to us about the experiences in this store and the real-time data for you to kind of close that deal 30 minutes, 3 hours or 6 hours, which gives me a neat segue to my next question, which is really that one of the biggest challenges today we have is balancing that consumer attention with the purchase propensity. So if we want him to, get aware of our product and then actually, show intent to buy it, what are the strategies that you would have looked at in this space? If you could share some light on that. I'm going to pass this around, starting from Shubhi, getting everyone's perspective on this question.
Yeah. Anita, I think if I were to consider some of the examples from Standard Chartered, which essentially would revolve what are our strengths, and in fact that is what Richa mentioned about discovery, would be the focal point for us. So for instance, if I were to become a thought leader in terms of wealth expertise, because if I look around in the H&I client segment, we are a commodity player. We all have almost very similar products. So what differentiates us is the expertise, is the global network. And how do I ensure that all of these things can be unified and can be put together as an experience to the client? Which essentially means, from a wealth expertise point of view, we look at creating a discovery for what are we good at in terms of wealth expertise. We are not an advisory bank. We are somewhere in terms of we recommend to our clients what could be the best way to take forward in terms of meeting their wealth ambitions. So we create thought leadership events, we create thought leadership reports, and how we use media strategies there is to ensure that we give them a way to discover which is essentially either through our, either through the online medium, our own media, our thought leadership events, and of course connect them back with our wealth specialists and investment specialists to then discover what's our approach towards that. So I think that would be something.
Thanks, Shubhi. Richa, from your side?
So I'm going to take this opportunity to speak. I'm a part of a council. Our job is not at the last mile. The brands take the final purchase. We are here to speak about, what the others don't speak of. So we speak about policy, we speak about sustainability. Nobody stands up, no brand stands up and says, hey, a natural diamond is 1 billion years old. It's older than a dinosaur, or it's older than some of the stars in the sky. And that's why it's different from a mass-produced lab-grown diamond. Or do I have facts on pricing? You don't see any brand standing up today and saying pricing, because here, while the rest of the world is talking, jewelers will never list a price. It's not a standard pricing. So we speak on aspects which lead to consideration, and, how the brands take it forward is different. But for me, taking the mindset where they stand to triggers, how we target them to speak, inform them of things which are different from what the brands are speaking about, or how we can connect it to what the brands are speaking, and sort of preempt the question which would have been before she steps into the store. And I think that we've been doing a lot of that through information. Today, the world has opened up where the consumer is way more discerning or way more knowledgeable than we give them credit for. I think that all of us, they probably know more than me when they step into a store, and we need to be considerate of that and add to that. So I think keeping pace with today's consumer is the largest challenge that we have. Also, the fact that lines are blurred, information from across borders, across the world, across age groups is all at your tips. And, figuring or questioning things which you don't know about is a big challenge. You walk into upskilling. The difference for me when you speak about omni-channels, the knowledge that they get digitally is so high, whereas a guy in the counter at the stores behind who's actually have the interface may not be as informed as they are. Our training doesn't equip. We have a large team who's actually making, so very intelligent online, but the brand is not as intelligent when you go in store. And upskilling becomes such a big part of, or a missing link for all of us, that we are trying to see how we can bridge that gap as well. Because tasalli tab hogi when the guy across says the same thing that I've read. So I need that double reinforcement to go out and make something which is going to last me for years to come. It's not an impulse purchase ki burger kha liya maine. So, I also need to take into account certain things like this, and that's why the propensity or the desire to buy or what comes, there is a gap which I think we are all learning and running to catch up with the consumer on.
Puri, the balancing between this is very difficult primarily for financial services brand, right? Because the minute you see somebody with an intent, then the idea is to keep hounding that person to go and get that conversion going. So how is this balancing act getting done in a way where you're not really, upsetting the consumer, but you're drawing the fine line into saying this much push and after that, let him be?
Sure. So I will just I'll just extend what Shibu just mentioned. So we also had the same consumer insight. Now think about that, two varied sectors, but consumers are behaving the same way. So we also initially used to call immediately after 30 seconds. We realized that it basically pisses the customer off. So the 31st minute is when we call. And when we clearly realized that when we call after post 30 minutes, the conversion rates are beyond 70%. So when you have an intended customer wanting to close a journey, we call post 31st minute, and that's where we've seen significant efficiencies. Now for the existing customers, I'll divide it into 3 parts. Okay, so obviously there's a lot of predictive analysis when you're on the app, right? You know exactly where the heat maps are. So for example, one of the insights that we have is that when a customer has landed on a research page on the app, he or she is more likely to do a lot more trades in the coming 6-7 months. So nudging the customer specific to the category of interest at the relevant points in time is something that we do. Second is, you are also from a cohorting perspective, again, intent to purchase. We have realized that 18 to 25 in tier 2, tier 3 towns are the guys who are the most highest risk takers in the stock market. So they are the ones who actually need money, but they don't have money. So this is where the MTF piece comes into play. So basically, aligning the needs of the customer at the right point in time and delivering with the right nudge is something that we do. I think the most interesting experiment that we recently did was, there was this one specific stock which I don't want to mention, was basically dropping, and there was a lot of talk about that specific stock around everywhere, on social, on news, on print. So we did, our research team did a very insightful, quick report on it. So we converted the report into a reel, and we put that reel out on WhatsApp with a clear last mile action. So basically now we have come to a point where converting real time news into content, from content to commerce. The other piece, the last point which is also very interesting, and this is a work for us, is IPOs. So India is the place for IPOs, even in the next 2 years at least. And again, we clearly know who are the customers who are looking for IPOs. Now, an IPO is just not about, we have a one-click IPO. Basically, you click on one click and you've applied for the IPO. But the idea is that even if you have clicked on the IPO, but you don't know if you have money in the wallet, or you have allowed a UPI to approve and the IPO has been delivered to you. So nudging at the right point in time. We've also seen, not only email nudges, WhatsApp nudges, also a telesales guy calling saying that, hey, it's going to be delivered soon. Why don't you have funds in your wallet? So yes, I think intent to commerce makes sense.
Thanks, Puneet. Ripple, if we could go to you, please.
So I think our job is simple yet very difficult, because we make people sleep peacefully, and sleep is the most difficult thing in life, right? Once you earn money, you can't sleep. Once you can't earn money, you can't sleep, right? So in both the sense, you can't sleep, and we have to make you sleep. So one of the first thing which we do on our retention journeys and everybody else is the piece of building trust, right? Because we as a brand, we are fairly young, but what can I do differently with you is come and tell you upfront about 2-3 things. One, build you trust on products. What do we do that? We say 100 nights free trial. You buy it. If you don't like it, you can return it. It's a very risky bet, right? It can lead to a lot of return replacement, and you have to build that in the P&L. It's a risky one. But what it does to the consumer on the other end, it just tells him that they are super confident about their product, that they are giving me something which is literally unthinkable, right? Second piece is that we say in our journey, because what Omni-Channel does to us is it helps us do a very honest, truthful pricing. Like somebody spoke about in the jewelry market, when you go for making or a gold price will be very different for everybody else, right? And that's why the consumer then trust only one Lalaji sitting at one place, because that has been my ages or a brand which I trusted, right? So we believe in Omni-Channel pricing, and it is absolutely clear a price which one guy gives at one store to 132nd store you call up, everybody else will give at the same second, same price. Or you go to Amazon also for that matter. We control the price so much over there, because the objective is that builds humongous trust in consumer for conversion. Because when I've liked the product, at that moment I always feel as an Indian customer, whatever you're buying, that I will today take out that extra 5%, 10% from this brand, right? So we are super confident. We want to lose, if we lose customer, but we say this is the final pricing we're never going to give you, right? Because that what builds the larger trust in the customer. I think, and second big piece with Indian customers which is happening is over a period of time, we are all ready for the best tech which is available here or globally. I think like ma'am spoke about China. Today you will see that a lot of research happening on sleep in India is probably better than what they are doing in China, because one, that will help us build products which are far more efficient. We launched something which is called a sleep analyzer, where we analyze your health and we're literally getting into a zone where we're going to predict what kind of health problems you can land up in future because of sleep deprivation and sleep troubles, and you not getting a REM sleep. But that's kept aside. The idea is to always take a leap of technology, build trust, and then everything just falls in place for you if you're doing this right.
Thank you, Ripple. Akhil, coming to you on it.
So I think there is I feel really good about, I see a lot of commonality in terms of how we're all trying to use data to address a customer question or solve a customer problem. I think the one thing probably that is kind of under the surface and we don't really talk about is the fact that data as a layer is really important, right? But what's probably more important is the intelligence that you apply to that data. When I'm talking about intelligence, I'm not talking about AI. I'm talking about the ability to ask questions, human intelligence. So for example, it takes human intelligence to ask really that question about at what point should I actually call somebody in order to ensure to kind of figure out what that propensity is, right? In Ripple's case, really, it is helping you to kind of convert better. But in Richa's case, I was thinking about the example of that person who walks into the store, how well the store owner is able to size up a customer, right? Because they know the customer really well. So that's intelligence that's being applied. For us, really, one of the things that we've always tried to do is figure out, okay, fine, you have a lot of data with you. What are you going to do with it, right? You can't just park it with a data scientist team and say that, okay, fine, come back to me with some sort of insight, right? Insight has to be something that is a habit, it's a mood, right? And that means you have to constantly question what the data is telling you. One of the things that we realized was that we launched a new product, it was an investment product, and we said that, okay, fine, very competitive when we put it out there in the market. But for some reason, we were seeing that, we were getting a lot of drop-offs at a particular stage, and it was fairly early on in the journey, and we were trying to figure out why. So we said, okay, fine, let's go back and see, we were trying to make all of the data said, you want this journey to be really seamless, don't bombard them with information, right? Give them just enough information so that they can proceed into that next, into that step 2 or that step 3. So that's how we had kind of designed the initial journey. And we said, okay, fine, for some reason that doesn't seem to be working. So we started talking to customers who actually went into the next phase. And we asked, and we just basically stack ranked all of the questions that they had in common. What is it that you want to know about my product that is not currently being answered, right? On that, on that landing page. And we had a list of 4 or 5, the most common questions, like in FAQs, but we said, okay, fine, can we surface that out? Can we kind of just put that up on the landing page, make it a little interactive, right? So that the customer, when he comes there, yes, there is basic information, but if he wants to dig in a little bit deeper, right, does he have the opportunity to say, okay, fine, let me hear a little bit more. I'm not sure if I want to speak to somebody, but let me just go one level deeper. And we realized that the minute we did that, we all of a sudden saw a hockey stick change in a customer's willingness to move ahead into that next step, right? But that wouldn't have happened unless we had reached out to the customers, asked them those questions and said, okay, fine, data is telling you one thing, but how do you apply intelligence on top of it to make it more meaningful, not just for us as a business, but also for the end customer who's trying to kind of, make a decision.
I think the human intelligence into artificial intelligence needs to kind of work in tandem to kind of get it going for all of us. So thank you so much for that. Abhishek, to you.
Yeah, I'll quickly answer this with an example. It's a very interesting example. And it comes to what you were saying is that how do I bring the human connect to it? So for us in life insurance, out of the 10 doors we knock, 1 door opens for us. और अगर कोई एक डोर खुल गया हमें उसको छोड़ना नहीं है. That is what we anticipate. That is what we go ahead with. But how do my agent who's there meeting the customers, and we call them advisors, our advisors who are meeting the customer, how do I ensure that this person, and most probably the advisor is meeting the customer for the first time, and the advisor does not know anything about the customer. Without sounding intrusive, how can I give a pitch to my sales guy and said, this is how you should pitch a product to the customer? So let me examine. So we did a consumer research across the country, and we figured out after a lot of, it was a 6-month study, we figured out basically at a psychographic level, Indian consumers are 4 types of consumers. That's it. And to make it easier for my sales guys, the recipient was only the sales guys. We converted them into animals. Okay, so and we said, so either they are an elephant, or they are a hawk, or they are a deer, or they are a lion. And we gave characteristics of each. The problem with most of the research project is, abhi de diya, ab kya? What will the sales guy do with it? So we went a step forward and we asked that you need to ask just 4 questions to this customer. Just 4 questions. input the answer. We gave a tool to this guy and said, input the answer, and the consumer's personality will come to you automatically. And therefore, you need to modify your pitch accordingly. And I will give you an example. Suppose I am a customer who's a deer. And the sales guy does this, and it comes out that this customer is a deer. Deer ki characteristics are very simple. This guy is very cautious, very not sure about himself or herself, wants to take a decision but still is very unsure कि कहीं मैं कुछ गलत तो नहीं कर रहा हूँ. What is the job of my sales guy? To reinforce. आप ठीक कर रहे हो. So when this sales guy is selling a term insurance product to a deer, the sales guy pitch will be, सर आप बिल्कुल ठीक कर रहे हैं, आपके फैमिली के प्रोटेक्शन के लिए ये बेस्ट है. बिलीव मी सर, मैं इस बिजनेस में 10 साल से हूँ, 20 साल से हूँ, कोई गड़बड़ नहीं होगी सर, आप ठीक कर रहे हैं, जस्ट reinforce. As against selling the same product to a lion. Lion is a kind of person who lives life king size. Jungle ka raja. This guy wants to feel important. So when the sales guy is selling a term product to a lion customer, he'll say, sir, क्या घर है आपका? क्या decision sir? You are the best sir. All of your decisions have been so good sir. You are doing so well for yourself. आपके बच्चे सर कितने अच्छे से हैं, everything. So basically customer को आप जिसको हम कहते हैं colloquial language में कि चढ़ा दो. Same product can be sold in 4 different ways to 4 different customers depending upon their psychogram. And that is what I was saying initially. A lot of our focus is to use data to enable the life, or to enable that the life of my sales guy becomes much more simpler, because insurance is an advisory business. There are no two ways about it.
Thank you, Abhishek. This has been an incredible discussion, and I want to thank each of the panelists for sharing such valuable insights. It's clear that data, technology, and experiences, all the parts that we really talked about, will continue to define the next era of commerce. Besides that, you need to seamlessly integrate certain elements while staying consumer first, which will lead us in this transformation. I, along with you, I'm going to look forward to where this retail media 2.0 and commerce is going to go to the next level. We'll traverse the journey together. Thank you so much, gentlemen, ladies. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.